The Cultural Council's mission is to nurture, promote, and support a healthy, diverse, and inclusive cultural sector so that the arts and culture are a part of everyday life for everyone. We invite listeners to discover Florida's cultural capital online at palmbeachesculture.com. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Artie Girl podcast. I'm your host, Sarah LaPierre, and I'm excited to share my table today with a wonderful guest, Carla Stansifer from the Morikami Museum. She is the Curator of Arts there, and I have a boatload of questions for you, and I'm just excited to have this conversation. So thank you for being on today.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. This is such a great opportunity.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
I am just, I've been a fan, an admirer, a person who loves to spend time at the museum and gardens. I've been there many, many times, and actually, the gardens and museum have come up many times on this show. I ask a question of all of the guests, where's one place in Palm Beach County that they think people visiting or living here should experience? And it's quite often brought up that it's the Morikami.
That's wonderful. I love to hear that. And we do sort of think of it as a hidden gem, but
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we want to make it less hidden, I think.
There we go,
but
yes.
It's a wonderful gem, definitely. So I'd love to get into some background first, if that's okay with you. And, just kind of hear about your journey and how you got into the niche that is Japanese art and curating.
Yes. In order to do that, we have to go way back. When I was young, I did gymnastics, and my first coach was Japanese American. And I got to stay at her house when I was about 6 or 7. So they had, shoes off at the door. They slept on futon. They had rice for breakfast. And that was my first encounter with the culture. And I absolutely loved it. And I knew right then I wanted to know more. So over the years studying, I was very lucky in my high school in Columbus, Ohio. We had a Honda plant nearby, so I could actually take Japanese classes.
Wow.
We had Japanese language in my high school. So very fortunate with that. And then Ohio State, studying the language and living as a student abroad for a year. And then Hawaii for a little while, used my language skills out there. And then all this time, art history has been in the background. I've always had art and, painting, studying, either doing it or studying it or researching it. It's always been there. So by the time I got around to grad school, I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to blend them together. So I got my master's in classical Japanese language and literature, and that really opened up a whole new world in art history research for me. So
that's fantastic. And I know that it's a Morikami position that actually brought you to South Florida, Palm Beach County.
Correct.
So for those who might not know about it yet, about the hidden gem, give us a little overview about what the Morikami is.
Okay. The Morikami is a wonderful place. It started with a gift of 200 acres from a man named George Morikami. He had come over from Japan in 1909 when he was 19 years old himself, came over, started life, had a lot of pitfalls, started again, saved again. But later on, by the 1960s, 70s, he had acquired about 200 acres in Delray Beach area. And he decided to give that to the people of Palm Beach County. So that's how we started as a park. And he just wanted a restroom maybe and some ball fields for the kids. But nowadays we have our original museum building, which was from 1977. We have our main museum building, which was finished in 1993. And then 2001, we opened our gardens, 16 acres of manicured, beautiful Japanese gardens.
That are just gorgeous to walk around. I mean, it's such a beautiful, peaceful slice that, again, you might not know is there, but it's a fantastic place to visit.
And I think that's the real advantage is the garden. Our garden designer is a man named Hoichi Kurisu. He's done lots of work on the West Coast and all over. He did a fabulous job adapting our garden to Japanese aesthetics because, we live in the tropics.
Yeah.
We don't have autumn leaves. We have a hard time with cherry blossoms, although this year we got really lucky. And, we don't get snow. So we had to kind of fill in the gaps, and he did a wonderful job of that.
It is really impressive. And I'm somebody who just knows a very tiny amount about, the landscaping and the requirements of doing that in South Florida, but it is incredibly impressive what he's been able to accomplish there.
Absolutely. And next time you go through, keep in mind, all of the boulders are from Texas.
Really?
The great big ones around the pond. Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that.
We had to bring them in. Yes.
So there's so much to know.
Yes.
Thank you for giving that overview. Now I'd love to see if you can give some insight when it comes to curating for Morikami.
Sure.
And you're pulling from a wonderful culture, nationality that expands across, all of these different eras and styles of art. What's your, I guess, starting point when you're curating?
It is a bit difficult being, over such a wide range of time. But fortunately, geographically, it's fairly small. So one of the things we like to do is mix up. We do really traditional things, and then we'll do something very contemporary. We like to do a bit of both. Personally, as a curator, I love working with the contemporary artists because that tradition's already baked in there. Like you can see the lineage, you can see the connections. And I find that really fun.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the show that's on exhibit now and then maybe the next one that's coming up?
Yes. Our exhibit currently is Akira, Neo Tokyo. And it's fabulous. This was an exhibit put together by a curator in Germany, Potsdam, Germany. His name is Stefan Ricole. Fortunately, he was able to come for our opening, as was the conservator. Her name is Hiroko Myokam. She was coming from Japan. So they both were here for the opening.
Wow.
It made it really great, really special. But we are the only U.S. venue for this exhibit, and it features 59 of the hand-drawn backgrounds from the original anime classic Akira. This is a film that came out in 1988. And anyone who knows the term anime, like this is really where it started. Akira was the first one. It actually had more viewings outside of Japan than in Japan. And so that was a big deal. But it was created at this really cool time when we had analog and digital techniques and the artists blending them together. For example, this was the first animated full-length film that used a synthesizer for the soundtrack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, it's the 80s. Woo. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of really phenomenal things about the film that make it so iconic. And we've been really happy to have it here. Unfortunately, it's leaving on Sunday.
Okay.
April 6th will be the last day. So,
wow,
yeah.
That's amazing. And it's exciting to hear that, we have a place locally that's getting such special exhibits that just aren't, going to be housed anywhere else in the U.S.
Yes. These
That's
international
wonderful.
exhibits, they're getting more and more expensive, more and more difficult to fund and to produce. But we're very fortunate to have this one.
And so you have exhibits that are loaned and then exhibits of your permanent collection as well.
That's correct. Yes. We have a permanent collection at the museum. We house about 7,000 objects. And they range from 4th century BC to current lacquerwares. We have some contemporary artists that we're working with now. One of my favorites is a woman named Asagi Maeda. She lives and works in Japan, but she makes jewelry. But her pieces are so amazing. Each piece has a narrative woven into it. So, for example, like she has Shinkansen, the bullet train. She has all acrylic and metal, and you can wear it as a necklace. But if you look on the train, each car is like a different stop on the route and different things going on, and just so much intricate detail.
The detail of it.
Yes. Yeah. And she does small gold figures in all of her work. So they don't really have a gender or race. They're just human, and everyone can adapt to them. And her work is very moving. I would go up in the galleries when her pieces were out, and people would be tearing up.
Wow.
I find that very moving.
It is. Yeah. That's definitely one of the questions I wanted to ask of just, what are some of the reactions that you see when you're seeing visitors, whether they're coming for the first time or they're repeat, visitors. What are some of the reactions that you get when people come there?
One of the biggest ones is surprise. You know, a lot of people are surprised at how big we are. They think, oh, we're just going to be a little small rinky-dink thing. But we're not. We have 6 gardens represented and our wonderful museum space. We have a theater, we have a cafe, we do programming, lectures, workshops, all kinds of things all year long. So I think people are generally surprised at our scale when they first come in the door and come to us. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Tell us about some of the programming that the museum and gardens offer.
Yes, that is much more under my colleague's purview. Sure. Wendy Lowe, she's our curator of education. But I can tell you some of the things we have coming up. The end of April, we're doing a Kyudo demonstration, the archery, traditional archery forms. We have a really great series called Sunset Stroll. First one's going to be April 10, and that one's going to be kind of a tea theme, tea culture, tea service, that kind of thing. And then May 22nd, I believe, is our next one. And that one's going to have more of a martial arts theme. So
exciting.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot going on, a lot to offer there.
Always something going on there. Yes.
So, you mentioned about some of your favorite work there. I was wondering if you had, you said you're 7 years of being there right now. Is there an exhibit that's really been a standout to you that's been your personal favorite?
It's always a hard choice to pick a favorite. It's, like asking a mother, which one's your favorite? But I do have one that's very near and dear to my heart. And it was Painting Enlightenment, which we had up right when COVID was starting. And these are paintings that were made by a man named Iwasaki Tsuneo. He's since passed, but he lived in Japan, and his trade, he was a biologist for many years. He actually worked with lab animals and things like this. So his scientific nature really came out in his work. He was very particular and very accurate with everything that he did. But when he retired from being a biologist, he started a tradition which is copying sutras. And sutras are like Buddhist prayers, Buddhist text. And there's one in particular, very famous in Japan, called the Heart Sutra. And as a practice, you can write out the sutra, write the characters with a brush, but do it very mindfully and do it very thoughtfully. And then that helps you gain some good merit, some insights. It's a wonderful practice. But he took this idea and went to a whole new level. It was amazing. So he not only took the sutra, but then, as you can see on the cover of the book, he made it into rain. He put it in the shape of a cat's eye, the shape of a candle, just all these wonderful small moments. But then also he did the Big Bang and this whole outer space scene with the sutra mixed into it. So just really phenomenal work. Yeah. And it has a lot to do with how we connect with nature and healing. And so at that time, COVID, we weren't planning it, but we had to shut things down, and they were able to let us double book that one.
To extend it. So
we could figure out what was going on. The pieces could remain safe and remain out. And we got a lot
get
of
seen as well, right?
Yes, and more coverage. And a lot of folks loved it. We got a lot of great feedback. And that's one that's really near and dear to my heart.
That's wonderful. When you have those kind of that timing line up, did that lead into anything else? I mean, of course, COVID redirected a lot of how museums function and how they show work and how they connect with the community. Was there any kind of big redirects that you faced at the time?
Yes, but it was more behind the scenes because we were shut down for a while. It gave me an opportunity to do a complete detailed inventory of all the paintings in our collection. It's something that you always want to do as a curator, get in there and, get some notes and get some details. But we never had the opportunity, but with things shut down, it presented one. So we made the most of it. Yeah. And from that, we've now had about 30 of our paintings conserved. Our big sponsors and upper level members who support us have been really, really generous to help us get some conservation done.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So when you have the shows, you have, like you said, rotating loan shows and then, exhibits from the collection, from the permanent collection. How do you balance those? Are there multiple spaces? What does that look like?
Yes. Well, we're just trying out a new phase this spring that I think is going to be good for us. And taking one very large gallery and making it into 3 smaller ones.
Okay.
So we can always have something for our visitors when they come. We can always have something from our collection, even when we're trading out these loan shows and traveling exhibits.
Of course, because that's a lot of behind the scenes that I think some people may not realize when they think about visiting museums is exhibits go up and they come down, and that takes a lot of very precise effort.
Yes. And we have a great team right now, collections manager, we have an exhibits manager, and we all coordinate together to make sure that everything is safely handled and treated. And there is so much with an exhibit, as you know, but coming in, we have to receive the pieces. We have to do the condition reports. We have to document everything. Then we get to put it on the wall. And then also interpreting it is a whole nother range of activities and people involved. So
it seems like it might be obviously an opening night, but is there a more exciting part of that process when you're putting together the exhibit? Is there a part that you really particularly can't wait for?
Well, it usually comes just before the opening. When you start to see all the pieces fall together and fall into place, that's when I usually get really excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's like, okay, it's really happening.
It's happening. It's real. It exists.
There's no denying it.
So I wanted to ask, I know Morikami plays a huge role in connecting Palm Beach County and South Florida to Japanese culture.
Yes.
I wanted to know how you think that impacts our area in a different way.
Yeah, I think it's very important, the work that we do. I will back up a little by saying if we were on the West Coast, we would have a large Japanese American community supporting us. But because the folks that came here for the Yamato village and lived here and settled here, there are only about a handful of their descendants in the state, and we treat them like royalty. We love them. We try to keep in touch with them and keep them up to date on everything we're doing. But we don't have that local grassroots in the same way. So I think what we've done is really pivoted to the arts community, and we have done a lot more with that. We've done some things with opera groups and ballet, and just trying to reach out to the other communities here. The Norton Museum, we do some loans with them from time to time, and so
that's wonderful. So you're able to collaborate with the arts community here, and maybe I think you mentioned off camera earlier that you've even done some loans to the Norton of pieces in the permanent collection, and you can work together and create something.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And we've shared a few staff members back and forth over the years, so I think that helps. But
the community's stronger that way, right?
It is. It really is.
So what is an event that you host that you think everyone should know about? If you're going to, come to one thing, or whether it's a first experience or not, what's the one big event that you want to get some more word out there for people?
Well, of course, for me, I have to say, come to the galleries, come and see the art. But we do have so many great events. I have to say Obon, the Obon Festival that we do in the summertime, because it's linked to loss and grief. It's an annual event in Japan where you sort of welcome back your ancestors, do some dancing and singing and drumming and things, and then they make lanterns and they send the ancestors back on the water. It's really beautiful. And, talk about moving reactions from visitors. I've seen some very, very moving and important reactions from people at that time, remembering a loved one. Either it was recent or could have been 5 years ago, but still, it hits you at that time, at that day and in that moment. I think Obon is something very, very special.
Yeah, I mean, I have attended and I agree. It's just a beautiful event. And I mean, of course, the grounds themselves are just beautiful to be in and the environment is lovely, but it is a unique experience. I think in our culture, we don't have, the same ways of recognizing ancestors, loved ones passed on, certainly not annually, maybe in our own private ways, but not as a community.
As a community, exactly.
Not in sharing that with anybody and seeing that on a large scale when you're lighting all these lanterns and sending them out. It's really very moving.
Yeah. And my favorite part about that is the communal dancing. You get in a circle, everyone does the same dance. And that's such a wonderful moment to really feel with the community, to feel like you're a part of something.
Feel connected and you know that you are just not alone in your either mourning of somebody if it's recent or just reoccurring for you or however the case is. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. So, I mean, that's just a great festival. I know there are many other things that are going on. You talked about some of the programming already, and we're going to talk more about it. But first, we're going to take just a quick little break and hear a word from our sponsor, the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County.
Those dinner reservations and tea times will have to wait. because there's an art-filled paradise beyond these beaches. A mecca of masterpieces, spectacular sights by day and night. A cultural capital that's calling your name. See so much more than you came for in the Palm Beaches.
So we're talking with Dr. Ahmed El Haddad, the Director of Acute Care Navigation for Tampa General Hospital here for today's Medical Minute. Doc, let's get right into it. I get asked every day, why is Tampa General here on the East Coast?
We're here to support the local hospitals and provide services that are not available in the community.
What does that mean for your patients?
It gives them opportunity and access to the latest innovations that healthcare has to offer that's only available at an academic center like Tampa General Hospital.
What happens if they need complex care and you have to get them over to Tampa?
We have a concierge service. We have 4 helicopters that arrange for immediate transport of the patient to provide them with immediate access of healthcare.
Awesome. Well, that was great. Thank you so much. And that was your Medical Minute brought to you by TGH.
I have this question. Museums are often seen as maybe quiet, contemplative places, but I know they can be full of surprises. Is there anything that you think that's different about the museum experience there that people might be surprised to learn about?
Yes, it is very contemplative and beautiful, but the real purpose of the garden is for healing, for being in the moment. You listen to the crunch of your footsteps. You feel the breeze on your face. You smell the waterfall around the corner. You're really just meant to be in the moment. And that to me is something you can't find anywhere else. And it's something that we need in our busy lives. We need to be able to sort of shut that off and reground ourselves. And I think more and more we need it, in these busy modern lives that we have.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite, really and I'm somebody who, when I travel, I want to visit the gardens that are there. That's like kind of top of my list usually. And so I do love visiting different gardens, but one of my favorite things about Morikami specifically is just being able to sit and listen to the bamboo because it's one of the best, most relaxing noises, sounds,
It is. It's so wonderful. I'm so glad you've had that experience.
Yeah. Every time I go there, I'm going to sit and just take some time there.
Wonderful.
That's, I think anybody who visits, that's something that they should probably know, right? Is that they need to come with a little bit of time for nothing.
Yes, take your time. Absolutely. And I think that's another thing that we're not like a regular botanic garden. We don't put signs out everywhere where all the plants are because, again, that's not the point of a Japanese garden. It's just to be in nature.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Do you have a favorite time of year to be in the gardens? That may be a loaded question being that we're in Florida,
but actually March, this time of year is quite good. We have a lot of different flowers blooming in the garden around this time. And I think I mentioned we have some acacia trees. They're not sakura trees. They're not cherry blossoms, but they look very similar.
Yes.
And they can handle our tropical climate.
Right,
so they are looking gorgeous right now. So I really have to say spring.
What do you think the order of, and you can be biased on this question, that's okay. What do you think the order of visiting should be? Like if somebody's, coming to spend a day, spend an afternoon, what would you suggest?
I'll tell you, when my family comes to visit or we have friends in town, we will go in. We'll go in the theater. There's usually a little introduction, something about George Morikami, the Yamato colony history, kind of how we got there, and then a little bit about what we've got coming up. So that's a great intro. And then from there, I would recommend exploring the garden. Like you say, take your time. It's 7/8 of a mile. So you can take as long as you like. We're open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We've got 7 hours. But I usually take, maybe an hour and a half wandering through the garden and enjoying that with friends. And then usually we come into the cafe and have a little something to eat. And then after everyone's refreshed and relaxed a bit, then I'll take them in the gallery and do my tour. So
nice. That's
yes.
wonderful.
And then don't forget the museum store. That's usually the last stop.
Of course. Yeah. Gotta exit through the gift shop.
I think that's a nice way to see all of the highlights, but not be too taxing or wear yourself out.
Right. Nice little break at the cafe,
Yes.
and then you're in some AC. And
Yes,
Yeah.
in the dark and quiet.
Yeah. So I want to go into an imaginary world for a minute with you
Okay.
where there are no limitations on resources. What would be a dream exhibit that you'd love to develop?
Good question. One I've had in the back of my mind for quite some time. Working title is Onna Now. Onna means woman in Japanese, and now being contemporary. Because through our collecting at the museum, we have about 7 contemporary Japanese women represented with some really phenomenal, really interesting pieces. Some great big murals, and then the little jewelry I had talked about earlier. So quite a range of objects. We also have a lacquer artist represented. That's one of my favorite materials. And a lot of people don't know about lacquer. It's the sap from the lacquer tree that becomes a resin and hardens over the piece, gives it a beautiful shine. So she, her name is Aoki Chie. She took that traditional form, but now she's doing it over styrofoam and, creating her own shapes and morphing her own body into the pieces.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is that typically sculptural work, or is she using it in that way?
Typically, traditionally, it was not sculptural. It was very
Oh,
functional. So
interesting.
yeah, she is one of these artists who's taking it in a whole new direction
Yeah,
and
that's
doing some really
exciting to
great
see.
things. So we have a couple more exhibits coming up. One with Mariko Kusumoto, who does some really amazing stuff. She's going to be with us this fall. And then in the fall of the following year, 2026, we have Naoko Fukumaru, and she does kintsugi. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's very popular these days, but perhaps you've seen it, where ceramic is broken and then
Oh,
they
yes.
use the lacquer again
Okay.
with gold
Yep.
to heal it. And again, think something that is broken and you think has no function, no use anymore, you can repair it, you can mend it, you can make it whole again. And that's very much the philosophy in her art. So I'm hoping we can get some of their pieces along the way too after the exhibits. And then we'll be in really good shape, I think, to have a nice show.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, I
That's-
look forward to that dream exhibit
and
someday.
We're talking a few years down the road here, but
That's all right. That's all right. And we were actually talking a little bit more about some things coming up a few years, maybe more than a few down the road.
Yes.
I would love to hear if there's, plans, ideas about the expansion of
Yes.
Morikami. What's in the future?
Yes. Well, our 50th anniversary is coming up in 2027. So yes, we're all thinking about the future and the past somewhat. But the county, Palm Beach County, has been great and really supported us over the years. They have a master plan vision that has been in place for some time. And from this point on, about 10 years down, they're looking for things like a museum expansion, which of course I would love because that would include more storage. They are talking about perhaps having a traditional inn, a Japanese style inn on the grounds. We'd have to adapt it somewhat. It'd be more like a boutique kind of hotel. But that's one option. Also an artist in residence on the grounds, which I would love. What a great way to build up the collection by inviting artists here.
Absolutely.
And they wouldn't just have to be visual artists. They could be chefs. They could be, musicians. They could be any number of things. So I think that would be really, really wonderful.
Tremendously exciting to have visiting artists, and potentially whether it's, for an exhibit or do something a little bit more involved where there's any kind of lecture or workship or anything like that.
We could certainly expand on that. Yeah.
Really exciting.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So that's kind of the grand vision, long range goals.
I love that. So we talked about some of the reactions from visitors when you're starting the process of creating an exhibit, of curating. What's the goal in mind? Is it changing every time? Is there...
Well, no, our mission is always the same.
Yeah.
We want to educate and inspire with regard to Japanese culture. So that's always at the heart of what we do. We always have to say we have to have the Japanese hook to it, whatever we're doing. Pardon me. Yeah, so we have to have that Japanese element regardless. But it could also be Japanese American. We're very open to that as well, given our history and how we were formed. But I have to say the most interesting, probably not something I've seen myself, but talking with our director, Bonnie White-LeMay, who's been with us for many years. She's great. And when we first opened in the late 70s, mid-late 70s, we had a lot of World War II veterans who were not very happy about us being in the area. But over the years, they were brought in, a friend brought them, a family member, someone brought them along. And almost all of them were changed. And I can say this because my grandfather was a Marine in Okinawa during World War II. And when I was studying and working in Japan, he hated it. He just couldn't adapt to that. I tried to work with him, get him through it, but there was a big gap. It was not being bridged at that point. So just to realize that we can do that for our community, that to me is very powerful. That's what art does. It changes minds. It gives people a voice who maybe don't have one normally, and especially at the Morikami, because we represent Japanese culture. I'm not Japanese, in case you're wondering. It's not my culture that I grew up in, so we have to be very careful about how we're representing it, how we're presenting it.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's the bridge that's available to our residents, our visitors, people coming from wherever they're coming from, that there's an opportunity there to learn and appreciate. And, like you said, for some people, it's potential healing, which is incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. We all need more of that.
Definitely. Yeah. I had another question, in light of recent global events, societal shifts, even state shifts, how do you envision the role of museums like Morikami evolving that and, I guess being a part of serving as a center for the community, and whether that's through programming or through the way you look at, exhibits that are coming in and doing things differently?
Well, I will speak to the American Association of Museums is like the overarching authority on museum policy. And we always turn to them, and I'm sorry, what are we talking about?
Yeah, that's fine. Just like what do you think the future of the way Morikami shifts? And like we're facing a lot of societal, cultural shifts.
Yes, huge shifts. But museums have typically been places of trust where you can get information. We're not going to shove it down your throat. We were going to present it. You can take it in at your own pace.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a great place to have controversial issues. You don't have to be on top of each other and yelling in each other's faces. Each experience it, go away, think about it, interpret it.
Absorb in your own time and space where you feel additionally safe. But
Yeah. So I think that's the biggest advantage.
Definitely.
Or the biggest shift that we're having.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So besides the museum and gardens, what is this is a question I ask everybody.
Okay.
What is, and I know you want to say the museum, of course, but besides that, anybody visiting, living in, what's an arts and culture related experience that you would always recommend people go to?
I would always recommend going to the Norton. Wonderful museum. They have a fantastic Chinese collection, so it doesn't really step on our toes. And that's why we can lend and borrow from each other. And they just have fabulous work, the sculptures. But the other fun fact is that the cemetery that is directly across the street from the Norton is where some of the Yamato settlers are buried.
Nice.
So anytime I go up there, I'll pay them a little visit.
Wow. Yeah. That area of the museum too, it's different than the others. I enjoy it. It's a different space that they've created. It's a little darker. The way that the rooms are laid out is different. It's very quiet up there.
Yes.
It just,
still has that contemplative feel from the Asian influence.
I like that shift in a space. So that's the great answer. Always a good one to go to the Norton. And like I said, a lot of people have mentioned the Morikami, so it's wonderful to hear. We always like to sort of come to the end of the show with maybe leaving a little advice for future generations. So if, you were to speak to a younger version of yourself or just a younger person who is thinking about getting into maybe museum curating, what's some advice that you might suggest for them?
The first thing I would have to say is volunteer. That's how I got started. Yeah. I had a summer project. I wasn't actually working in the museum per se. They had a library and they had a bunch of volumes that were written in Japanese, and the librarian couldn't read them and needed someone to translate them. Not necessarily translate, but transcribe. It'd be a better one, so that she could, get it in the system and everything would be cataloged. So that was my introduction to a museum. That was a summer project. And it just opened up a whole new world. But now that I've been working in museums for about 25 years now, I do see that, the folks who are volunteering and very passionate, those are the ones I like to keep an eye on. So I think that's a great way, just get involved. If you can do it for free, then they'll give you a job.
So. Love that advice. No, it's great. And I'm assuming there's probably opportunities on some level to volunteer
Absolutely.
At
We have
Morikami?
a great group of docents at the Morikami. We have volunteers who help us, up front and with wristbands and some of the general things, greeting. But then we have our pool of docents, and they work really hard. They study, they take tests, they have to pass the exams before they can take people into certain areas. So I really like working with that group. They're
That's
really
wonderful.
great.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, thank you for leaving the advice. I appreciate it. Before I let you run off, I, of course, want to make sure people know how to get connected. If they want to come to an event, if they want to volunteer, if they want to find out more about the Museum and Gardens and how they can experience it, where is their best place to do that?
Best place, one-stop shopping. You can go to morikami.org. That's Morikami.
Perfect.
Morikami.org. I think that's good because there you can find information about membership.
Okay.
I really recommend that because then you get announcements and notices of what we're up to, what's going on, what's new, what's different. So that's a great way to support the museum and still keep in touch.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, I hope, more of our audience will know about and visit the Morikami Museum. But thank you again for sharing this time with me and having a conversation. I always love to hear that, the arts and culture here is alive and well and being shared in so many different ways.
We're very fortunate.
Yes. And expanding. We have more to look forward to. Yes. So that's wonderful. Thank you again to our listeners for checking us out, tuning in. We appreciate you. And of course, a huge thank you to our sponsor, the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County. We'll see you next time on the Artie Girl Podcast.